This experience happened to me quite a number of years ago while driving home from work. I worked as a forest service worker, not a park ranger, but basically the same kind of job. Although the difference is that with mine, I'd kind of signpost people to go to different locations at the park. Now, the job wasn't really that difficult in honesty. Usually you just help out friendly tourists who come from North America and just show them around. So I was pretty relaxed usually. In the parks that we covered, the only real danger was the weather. Especially if you come from somewhere that doesn't necessarily have bad weather, it can be a really big shock to your system to have such bad weather storms as we do here. Before I get to the main body, I'd like to give you some of the background to what happened that day. So I only had to work for a couple of hours, which I was really happy about. It turned out that I'd accidentally done the prior day's tasks in advance for now, so I was happy not having to do so much. I basically just went near the body of water that we have. It was quite frozen over now, but still looked really nice, and I'd just sit upon the rock and stare out. I don't really know why I'd do this. I just found that from staring up on my big rock, I really found some kind of zen state that I couldn't find from other methods. So it was definitely my happy place. I remembered that while being here, everything felt pretty good. Nothing was wrong. I was aware of how cold it was, but to be honest, I couldn't feel it at all because of the coat that I was wearing, so that was another pretty positive thing of the whole experience. So yeah, things were going pretty well for me. I wasn't that long away from having a career change though. My plan was to really enjoy my last few days before the change actually come, so that's what I was trying my best to do. I made some great friends here as well, so everything was lovely, truthfully. So I decided that it's time to head back now. Again, I'm feeling really happy, nothing's wrong. The sun was actually shining quite bright in the sky at this point, so it made everything feel especially warm and lovely. And that was definitely welcome. It was actually causing some of the snow to melt, which is a good thing, because I had quite a long way to drive back home. Around then I hadn't moved out with my partner, so I was just living with my parents. The only problem is my parents live quite a long way from where my work actually was, but it didn't matter too much. With all this in mind, I decided that I should get some nice snacks and a hot drink for the drive. It's going to be a really comforting thing, especially because it's going to get colder the more dark it is when I drive out. So I get up onto the little bridge where there was actually a stream still flowing. It wasn't cold enough for this to freeze up, and obviously you have the water moving, so it's a lot more difficult. When I'm doing this, I have a feeling in my gut that something's just not right. At first, I presume that there's other people here and maybe they're potentially dangerous, so I don't stay up on the bridge for too long. I just take a nice look at my surroundings and decide that, yeah, it's time that I get a move on now. Who knows what's out here? Maybe it's a big animal or something. I've had a few encounters with larger animals before where that I actually feel pretty bad and then I see one, so I was worried. In my part of Europe too, you're not actually allowed to have any real weapons, so you kind of on your own if there's an attack and you don't want to be on the other end of one. So putting this aside, I go into my car, start up the engine and really look forward to my drive. I really like driving, especially at night. Again, this might be foreign to people living in the built-up cities, but honestly, we have lots of land and nice long roads that you can drive in, so you never really feel like you're out of place when you're doing so. So it's truthfully something that I'll never take for granted, and even now I still don't. So I get my hot chocolate ready and a few of the snacks that I have and start drinking. It actually got so cold so quick, it was honestly ridiculous, but I still enjoyed it. So I'm driving on the first part of the journey and say goodbye to everyone as I pull out. That's good. There's no other cars other than our own ones, so it should be pretty plain sailing from here, I think. It makes me start to think that maybe it was some kind of animal that I heard that made me fall off and like something was wrong. But I don't know, I can't be certain as I didn't see anything. My mind is on the future, and a part of me is kind of sad that I know that I'm not going to be doing this job for too much longer. So eventually, I pull onto the main road and it's basically more forest from here. There was something really beautiful about our nature. Again, I don't know, it's just very much like out of a film. The trees are wonderful, the snow makes everything look beautiful, and the snow caps a lot of the mountains and the large hills around, so that looks especially cool. Sometimes I actually have to be careful driving that I don't go into things because I'm not concentrating. Now, as I'm driving up ahead, the police actually stopped me for a while. I asked them what they're doing and why they had to stop me, but they never really explained, saying, well, we can't reveal much to you. We're just doing a general search. I say, okay, cool. And they search all around my car. I remember thinking, like, I just wish they'd hurry up because it's getting really cold now and I don't want to let out all of the hot air. I decide just to stand on the road for a bit, and I can see that there's no other cars coming the way that I'm going. I try and have a look around to figure out why I'm not allowed up there. I ask again, but furthermore, they don't let me up there, so I think, well, okay, whatever. I was actually a little bit annoyed at this, but I decide just to put my anger to the side for a while and just appreciate more of the moment being outside. They keep asking for documents, which obviously I'm not going to have on me at that time. It's kind of to a ridiculous extent. I mean, God, they wanted everything off of me. I gave them my license, even my passport which I had on me, but apparently they wanted even more. The weirdest request was a birth certificate, and I told him, look mate, I don't have a birth certificate. Of course I'm not going to have that on me. Why would you ask for that? And he keeps on prodding and prodding. He then says that he has to take my name as suspicious for failing to provide adequate documentation, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I tell him I can literally drive him to my house to avoid all of this. Oh God, what if my parents find out? They're not going to believe me. I keep thinking. All of this rushes through my head as he says, well, sorry, I've got to do what I've got to do. I then have to wait in my car for what feels like an eternity. It starts warming up again though, which is a good thing, but I was really annoyed. I also basically felt like some kind of caged animal just sitting there waiting, like I'd done something really terribly wrong, but of course I'd done literally nothing. It was just the circumstances of which had presented themselves to me, which I really didn't want to. I just wanted to get home and relax. So this story happened to me 7 or 8 years ago. I live out in a rural part of Maryland, where there's nothing but farms and woods around my neighborhood. I was home alone, about 12 or 13 years old, riding my scooter outside around my driveway. Across the street from my house is a cornfield with a tree line behind it, which is about 200 yards long and 40 feet wide, leading up to another cornfield behind it. My family is actually friends with the farmer who owned the property, and he had 2 kids around the same age as my sister and myself that we played with. Anyway, like I said, I was riding my scooter up and down our driveway when something urges me to look into the tree line. I stopped and heard a lot of branches breaking and saw a humanoid thing, completely white from head to toe, sprinting through the woods and dodging trees and ducking its head and body around. It ran really fast and paused in a clearing and stood up to look at me for a moment. My heart dropped and it continued sprinting through the woods while I sprint up the driveway and lock myself in the house with my BB gun and dog. I was shaking in my room and waiting for my mum to get home to tell her what happened. I was too far away to see what his face looked like or to make out any detail in general. All I could tell is that it was really tall, fast and solid white from head to toe. My mum didn't know what to think of it, and my dad was kind of shocked to hear it because he thought it was some kind of druggie or something. I told them it was not human at all and didn't run like one. To this day I remember it like it was yesterday, and now I always carry something to defend myself while I'm outside and it's dark. Hello everyone, this has been on my mind since it happened. Now I'm 20, and me and my buddies enjoy taking long night walks on trails within various conservation areas in my region of southwestern Ontario. Now late at night last week, we decided to check out an area called Pleasant Valley. To my knowledge, this area has a deep-rooted history with Underground Railroad, Indigenous people, as well as the War of 1812. I believe some of which is due to its proximity to Lake Erie. We entered the woods at about 2 a.m, and immediately upon entering, I was overcome and had a bad feeling after walking some time. The feeling progressively worsens until we reached two bent trees in the path. Now, my buddy pointed out the fact that it's not good to go underneath and we should just call it a night as we all feel like we're being watched. As soon as we turn around and start to head back, the entire forest dramatically changed and becomes eerily loud. Now, it's suddenly quiet afterwards. Distinctly, we start hearing human whistles behind us, almost like when you call a dog. There's no way anybody could have been out here at that hour, and there are no homes in close enough proximity for that to be the case. We all ran and were honestly terrified, and my friends and relatives are big guys, but we all feel extremely uncomfortable in this situation. Hello everyone, this has been on my mind since it happened. Now I'm 20, and me and my buddies enjoy taking long night walks on trails within various conservation areas in my region of southwestern Ontario. Now late at night last week, we decided to check out an area called Pleasant Valley. To my knowledge, this area has a deep-rooted history with Underground Railroad, Indigenous people, as well as the War of 1812. I believe some of which is due to its proximity to Lake Erie. We entered the woods at about 2 a.m, and immediately upon entering, I was overcome and had a bad feeling after walking some time. The feeling progressively worsens until we reached two bent trees in the path. Now, my buddy pointed out the fact that it's not good to go underneath and we should just call it a night as we all feel like we're being watched. As soon as we turn around and start to head back, the entire forest dramatically changed and becomes eerily loud. Now, it's suddenly quiet afterwards. Distinctly, we start hearing human whistles behind us, almost like when you call a dog. There's no way anybody could have been out here at that hour, and there are no homes in close enough proximity for that to be the case. We all ran and were honestly terrified, and my friends and relatives are big guys, but we all feel extremely uncomfortable in this situation. Now my 11-year-old grandson, who is not known to lie, was at the bus stop waiting to go to school last week. I was on the phone with him and I heard him gasp and I asked him what's wrong. I assumed a stray or somebody's dog because people don't always keep their dogs on check here, unfortunately. He said he saw a tall dark figure running in the woods. Then his bus came and he said that he had to go. I questioned him, and when he got to go home, he said that he saw something which is abnormally tall, taller than anyone he's ever seen before, very thin, wearing all black. He said it had no face and everything around it was darker. I asked him was he scared of this, and he said it didn't scare him but more shocked him, as he's never seen anything like it. I let it go at that and didn't bring up anything else in case of scaring him. But I don't know what it could have been. We actually live in the country, so I'm a little nervous myself. This experience happened to me quite a number of years ago while driving home from work. I worked as a forest service worker. Not a park ranger, but basically the same kind of job. Although the difference is that with mine, I'd kind of signpost people to go to different locations at the park. Now, the job wasn't really that difficult in honesty. Usually you just help out friendly tourists who come from North America and just show them around. So I was pretty relaxed usually. In the parks that we covered, the only real danger was the weather. Especially if you come from somewhere that doesn't necessarily have bad weather, it can be a really big shock to your system to have such bad weather storms as we do here. Before I get to the main body, I'd like to give you some of the background to what happened that day. So I only had to work for a couple of hours, which I was really happy about. It turned out that I'd accidentally done the prior day's tasks in advance for now, so I was happy not having to do so much. I basically just went near the body of water that we have. It was quite frozen over now, but still looked really nice, and I'd just sit upon the rock and stare out. I don't really know why I'd do this. I just found that from staring up on my big rock, I really found some kind of zen state that I couldn't find from other methods. So it was definitely my happy place. I remembered that while being here, everything felt pretty good. Nothing was wrong. I was aware of how cold it was, but to be honest, I couldn't feel it at all because of the coat that I was wearing, so that was another pretty positive thing of the whole experience. So yeah, things were going pretty well for me. I wasn't that long away from having a career change though. My plan was to really enjoy my last few days before the change actually come, so that's what I was trying my best to do. I made some great friends here as well, so everything was lovely, truthfully. So I decided that it's time to head back now. Again, I'm feeling really happy, nothing's wrong. The sun was actually shining quite bright in the sky at this point, so it made everything feel especially warm and lovely. And that was definitely welcome. It was actually causing some of the snow to melt, which is a good thing, because I had quite a long way to drive back home. Around then I hadn't moved out with my partner, so I was just living with my parents. The only problem is, my parents live quite a long way from where my work actually was, but it didn't matter too much. With all this in mind, I decided that I should get some nice snacks and a hot drink for the drive. It's going to be a really comforting thing, especially because it's going to get colder the more dark it is when I drive out. So I get up onto the little bridge where there was actually a stream still flowing. It wasn't cold enough for this to freeze up, and obviously you have the water moving, so it's a lot more difficult. When I'm doing this, I have a feeling in my gut that something's just not right. At first, I presume that there's other people here and maybe they're potentially dangerous, so I don't stay up on the bridge for too long. I just take a nice look at my surroundings and decide that, yeah, it's time that I get a move on now. Who knows what's out here? Maybe it's a big animal or something. I've had a few encounters with larger animals before where that I actually feel pretty bad and then I see one, so I was worried. In my part of Europe too, you're not actually allowed to have any real weapons, so you kind of on your own if there's an attack and you don't want to be on the other end of one. So putting this aside, I go into my car, start up the engine and really look forward to my drive. I really like driving, especially at night. Again, this might be foreign to people living in the built-up cities, but honestly, we have lots of land and nice long roads that you can drive in, so you never really feel like you're out of place when you're doing so. So it's truthfully something that I'll never take for granted, and even now I still don't. So I get my hot chocolate ready and a few of the snacks that I have and start drinking. It actually got so cold so quick, it was honestly ridiculous, but I still enjoyed it. So I'm driving on the first part of the journey and say goodbye to everyone as I pull out. That's good. There's no other cars other than our own ones, so it should be pretty plain sailing from here, I think. It makes me start to think that maybe it was some kind of animal that I heard that made me fall off, and like something was wrong. But I don't know, I can't be certain as I didn't see anything. My mind is on the future, and a part of me is kind of sad that I know that I'm not going to be doing this job for too much longer. So eventually, I pull onto the main road and it's basically more forest from here. There was something really beautiful about our nature. Again, I don't know, it's just very much like out of a film. The trees are wonderful, the snow makes everything look beautiful, and the snow caps a lot of the mountains and the large hills around, so that looks especially cool. Sometimes I actually have to be careful driving that I don't go into things because I'm not concentrating. Now, as I'm driving up ahead, the police actually stopped me for a while. I asked them what they're doing and why they had to stop me, but they never really explained, saying, well, we can't reveal much to you. We're just doing a general search. I say, okay, cool. And they search all around my car. I remember thinking, like, I just wish they'd hurry up because it's getting really cold now and I don't want to let out all of the hot air. I decide just to stand on the road for a bit, and I can see that there's no other cars coming the way that I'm going. I try and have a look around to figure out why I'm not allowed up there. I ask again, but furthermore, they don't let me up there, so I think, well, okay, whatever. I was actually a little bit annoyed at this, but I decide just to put my anger to the side for a while and just appreciate more of the moment being outside. They keep asking for documents, which obviously I'm not going to have on me at that time. It's kind of to a ridiculous extent. I mean, God, they wanted everything off of me. I gave them my license, even my passport, which I had on me, but apparently they wanted even more. The weirdest request was a birth certificate, and I told him, look, mate, I don't have a birth certificate. Of course I'm not going to have that on me. Why would you ask for that? And he keeps on prodding and prodding. He then says that he has to take my name as suspicious for failing to provide adequate documentation, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I tell him I can literally drive him to my house to avoid all of this. Oh God, what if my parents find out? They're not going to believe me. I keep thinking. All of this rushes through my head as he says, well, sorry, I've got to do what I've got to do. I then have to wait in my car for what feels like an eternity. It starts warming up again though, which is a good thing, but I was really annoyed. I also basically felt like some kind of caged animal just sitting there waiting, like I'd done something really terribly wrong, but of course I'd done literally nothing. It was just the circumstances of which had presented themselves to me, which I really didn't want to. I just wanted to get home and relax now. I was really tired. Then eventually, the cop says, yeah, you're free to go. I say great and close the door really quickly. And then he looks at me like I was trying something and I didn't even bother making eye contact. I just go to start my car up and nothing happens. I hit the wheel and try again and finally I get it. I think it was so cold that it couldn't actually work properly, but eventually I'm able to get it on its way and I head off. Why on earth did that guy stop me? Why was he so bad to me? I keep thinking over and over again. I scrunched up the ticket and I threw it on the floor, the one that he gave me. I know this probably isn't a good idea, but I was just angry. Like, I just didn't care. I thought, what, is this going to go against me? And I start to lend quickly to overthinking. Maybe I'm not going to get a job now, and I think of all rubbish like that obviously isn't true, but I guess it was a heated moment for me. So I continue driving, and after not long I forget about everything. I quickly drink the rest of the hot chocolate like it's water because of how cold it's become now, and I keep going. That's when, what do you know, another cop decides to show up to ruin my day. This time, I can't see the car or anything, I can just see the cop up there. He's completely covered up though, but he definitely has a police uniform on. I decided that this is basically the last time that I'm going to stop for one of these guys. If this happens again, I'm going to keep going. I ended up slamming on the brakes though, and I stalled my car a few times, and I'm trying to get it working again. But something felt different the way he just stood there. He was waving at me very slowly, and I couldn't see all of what was behind him. It looked like he was holding his back in pain. And I think something's odd about this. I decide just to put the full beams on, try and see him better, but I can't. He's even wearing sunglasses. He's about 5 feet 10 or so, looks relatively normal, but something just felt off. You know how sometimes with your body, you can read the energy of a situation? Well, it was one of those moments, and I really truly trust my gut when they happen. So yeah, I think something's odd, and I decide to just slowly edge up towards him. I remember that I'm in my car, and I can just drive off quite quickly if I need to. Now, I actually put my clutch up quite high. If you're in America, you might not know, but that's basically what we have in most European manual cars. By doing this, I'm actually in a position where I can basically just floor it really easily if I need. So I do so, and just as I get close enough, he turns away, almost like it's out of sight. I almost stop for a second, then thud. Something hits really hard onto my car. For a second, I thought I'd run him over, but that defies the laws of physics. I instead step on the gas and go, go, go. I almost got off the side of the road I was going so quickly. I glanced up quickly to see what he was doing, and that's when I realised that he has an actual axe in his hand. And there's something on the end of it. I then hear a scream sound too. I can't hear it too well over my tyres, but I definitely heard it. I drive like I've never drove in my life before. I literally almost end up going off of the road quite a few times because of how I was going, and I tell myself, stop, 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 calm down, I'm gonna crash. Now I then realise that my fuel's gone down quite a lot too. It doesn't take long and I'm able to get to a petrol station. I then inspect my car and there are multiple gashes that I didn't realise. One straight over my fuel tank and they're big. I think, my god, this is like something that you never see before. And I quickly make a call to my parents. They're obviously extremely worried and my dad actually called the cops for me. And I wait there. My mum and dad want to stay on the line, but I don't have much cell service and the line's shaky. I also need to have enough to contact the police again if I need to. I go in the gas station and explain to the store owner that I've had to call the law enforcement for something, and kindly he makes me a tea. So I sit down and start drinking this. Now it doesn't take long before the cops show up and they inspect my car. They apologise for the damage. Annoyingly, the insurance company can't actually cover this because how am I going to prove what happened? I realise this and get annoyed. The cop senses my anger and says, "Son, don't be so angry." He then goes on to explain that apparently there's somebody on the loose there which has been attacking and even killing people using an axe, pretending to be either a medic or a law enforcement or some other kind of emergency service person. They then want to know exactly where I saw him, and I then explain. This makes my whole body go cold, as I realise that in that moment, I probably had just escaped my first life or death situation without realising it. I was on shift one night and everything was going relatively normally. In fact, I did something against the protocol of where I worked. I decided that I needed to go for a walk just to get out. This is on the week of which is leading up to Halloween, so a lot of the trees are dead around here, and I kind of dealt with a few people being idiots earlier in the week. You'd often find people trying to scare each other out here, and I don't know, there was something really creepy about seeing people out here sometimes. As a ranger, it's something that shouldn't necessarily come as a surprise to me, as basically our whole job is just to watch out for people and make sure we maintain the nature and the park. There was a few things on my mind in this moment. I was getting really tired of working. I wasn't able to stop working when I wanted to, and my work didn't let me use time off when I wanted to, and I think it was having a little bit of an effect on me. I mean, I was kind of doing everything and doing a pretty good job, of sticking to the book and getting everything done. But eventually it starts to tire you out a little bit. I realised too that if there was something on my mind, I would almost zone out completely and simply focus on that. Even if I was talking to somebody, I'd be looking them dead in the face and I'd just completely blank out to almost another place, which I think was pretty weird for me. But the show goes on, as the old saying goes, so I continue. As I'm walking, there was an absolutely beautiful brisk breeze this night and it made me feel really good. The trees are starting to look especially beautiful too, just because of the time of year. These didn't necessarily change colour too much, but there was something about having a mixture of ones with leaves on it and those without, or fern or whatever, that I found particularly attractive. The park lake where we were had a beautiful blue lake next to it. Now this meant that we had to be especially careful because sometimes people would go in the water, even at this time of the year when specifically they were instructed not to, they would still do it. And it become quite dangerous really, because all it takes is one wrong move and you can go in there for too long and not come out again. Hypothermia sets in a lot quicker than what people realise it does, so this is a specifically dangerous area and I don't have a good feeling about being here for some reason. I can see that there's one small boat out there, but it's kind of drifting. I presume that somebody's left it there and forgotten about it and it's just come off of the shoreline into the lake itself. I know for a fact that I'm absolutely not going to be able to get it right now. I don't want to take the boat out and it's too dangerous because if I fall in, I'm really going to struggle to get myself back in time. I'd make a fire, yeah, but I don't want to set fire to the whole forest. One of our colleagues actually did this before, believe it or not. Rather than actually checking what they were doing was accurate and safe, they had in fact not done so whatsoever, and eventually ended up putting everybody's lives in danger here, which I think was a pretty crazy thing to do. We put out the fire quite quickly, but it could have easily spread into a huge one. It would have cost millions and millions of dollars for us to repair, but the toll on nature would have been far worse. So that wasn't necessarily my idea. I decided to call around to see if anybody else is there and try and figure out what everybody else is doing, but I don't get a reply, so I just assume that this might be empty. It might be my chance here. Now, I continue on and keep on getting more and more lost in my thoughts. It was kind of like a self-filling cycle where the more you do it, the worse it becomes, but it was really difficult for me to focus on anything else. I was actually quite annoyed. I just couldn't seem to get out of my head at all. It felt like I just had far too much work to do, and just people really making my life difficult. Also, there was some money I was owed on some online work I'd done, so I was pretty cheesed off about this. I mean, who isn't when they're owed money? So I continue onwards and I can hear the breathing of animals around me. I don't know what animal that is, but I did realise that was a very strange thing to have. It's something that I haven't necessarily encountered. It sounded like there was maybe a dog breathing around me every so often, but it was weird. I thought maybe a dog got off or something, but God, I hated the idea of it. I love dogs and didn't want to know any were astray. I even stupidly start thinking maybe it's to do with the boat, and I keep trying to snap myself out of these weird spiraling thoughts but I just can't seem to. It was like something took control of my mind. That's when I noticed something on the horizon. There are 3 plumes of smoke. I think, God, that's the last thing I want. The problem is, I'm on the opposite side of the lake at this point. Funnily enough, the boat seems to be drifting towards me. I know I promised to myself that I wasn't going to go out on it, but I just wasn't in the mood. I think I was just too tired, so I waited. From the looks of it, this isn't necessarily a dangerous fire. It's almost like somebody was putting up a smoke signal, which I think is really weird. Why would you be putting up a smoke signal here? This is not hundreds of years ago. We are well within the 20th century now, so what was happening? I do find it particularly odd though how that the boat is slowly drifting across to literally exactly where I am. I sarcastically say thank you when I realise it's not too far away. Now the boat itself actually looks quite old. It's like somebody's made this out of hand, maybe 10 years ago or so, where there's almost some kind of agent or patina as such on the wood. It looks like nobody's ever been in it. I put my hand towards it and I stop. I have a feeling I shouldn't be doing this. God, what am I thinking? The boat could easily sink and then I'm in trouble. So I get up and continue now on the perimeter. The other problem now is I can't be gone from the station for too long because, really, I should be checking in with other people to let me know if there's anything that I need to do and how I am too. But I didn't. So, instead, I just keep walking quicker. Now, I'm getting closer to where the fire is, or at least the smoke, and I realise that it seems to have gone out. Out of the 3 plumes, I can only see 2 now. I get closer and there's only 1, and eventually none at all. I'm certain there's people doing this now. I think they've seen me and put out their fires and went to hide off somewhere else, so I don't take too much notice now. Just continue walking down there. Now I get closer and closer, and then I find something especially strange. There seems to be no source of the smoke or fire whatsoever, which is pretty weird. I don't understand that. I was literally right next to it and now there seems to be nothing. I should at least have some signs of what this is, but I don't. I decide that we're gonna have to send out a search at some point, because this is really dangerous. I don't want to be the one sleeping there when there's a huge fire. So I decide to turn away. I look for the boat and I presume that it's drifted off somewhere further as I start making my way around the other side again. I thought maybe some people had some time off over the Halloween holidays and just wanted to enjoy themselves out here. I call that, hey, no camping. When I lock eyes with something, there seems to be an owl or something up in the trees. It doesn't look right though. This looks like an absolutely huge one. I can make out the beak and where the eyes are supposed to be. And now I hear rattling. I quickly look around to see if there's any snakes or anything, but I don't see any. That's bizarre. It sounded like there was a rattlesnake right next to me. I'm actually terrified of the things. There shouldn't be any out here, but I quickly turn back. Not that I wasn't brave enough to investigate what was possibly going on here. I mean, I absolutely wasn't, but I don't want to get caught up in some kind of rubbish like that. So I get back. I've actually got bit by a snake before and had to go hospital, and it was not a fun experience or one that I'd like to do again in the future. I start to sweat a little bit too, and something feels off. As I'm walking, I can hear some kind of whistle sound. It sounds almost like a human whistling to try and retrieve an animal, but every so often. I don't know where it's coming from too. At one point it sounded like it was coming from right next to my head, and at other times it sounds like it's much further away. But the sound was definitely following me. I catch my thoughts spiraling once again into I'm gonna get murdered out here and some rubbish like that, so I manage to snap myself out of it. I walk a bit further, then take a few seconds to take in the beautiful scenery around me. It looks really nice and I find that this calms me down a lot. I start focusing on the little things that I'm gonna do when I get back home, and again, I feel better now. As I was walking back, I couldn't stop thinking about how much time I felt like I'd wasted. I just felt like it was stupid to go out here. I was angry now because I decided to walk but actually felt worse for it. But I don't have too much time to dwell on it, and I'll eventually make it back in. I then hand over for the shift in the following morning. I don't mention anything to them, but the weird part's when I get home. Now, as I said, we're in the run up to Halloween, so you're kind of used to seeing different people dressed up and stuff. So I don't think much of what I see next. As I'm driving, something walks out into the road. Now, I'm on quite a long forest road here. I'm effectively in the middle of nowhere specifically, but you do get the odd car or two. What I see is something walk out which is about 4.5 feet tall. It comes from the tree line, holds something up to me, then walks off, and I can see a smoke trail behind it. I then realise it's holding some kind of sage or something. Again, I think this is especially weird, but remind myself it's Halloween, so I don't think too much of it. I eventually get back home, unlock up and go inside my home. I didn't have my family there at the time, so it was a little bit lonelier than normal. That was fine. I'm used to these situations happening, but it wasn't necessarily fun. I grab a newspaper, make myself a decaf coffee and sit down to drink it. On my porch I get a really nice view into the woods. Now, as I'm sitting there drinking it, I have a strange smell. It's one that I haven't smelt for years and years, since I was about 14 doing my first job. The person who worked there had the little tiny incense things. I don't know what you call them, but the things on the stick you light. They smelled just like that. I actually go and check my toaster and everything just to make sure there's not a big fire which is about to engulf my house, so I'm not bothering to check. But there's nothing. I then light a candle to try and put out the smell. And I sit down going to read my newspaper and I start hearing the rattling sound once more. Okay, now this is quite scary. I'm actually worried myself and I'm sure I can hear breathing. I go and grab my knife. I didn't have a gun at this time. I didn't want to get into a melee battle with something, but I think there's someone on my property. Or a snake, which I'm also going to have to probably fight off. My hands are actually really sweaty. It's annoying because I have to keep wiping them trying to hold my knife, and I actually put it into the sleeve of my jumper. As I'm doing this, I notice someone walking past my house kind of staring in too. They looked especially weird. It's someone with a very long beard who kind of stops for a few seconds and keeps on walking. There was something about it I didn't like. He looks very old. He has quite dark skin. But as soon as he goes past, the rattling sound seems to stop. Now, I don't know what to make of this again. And I decide to call the police now. Something was really off about this situation and I couldn't necessarily put my finger on why it was all happening. So I wait for the cops to show up, which was late as anything. I'm actually tempted to call them to come back the following day because I can't be bothered, but eventually they arrive. I remembered looking at my watch and realising that the time had stopped on it, which is also bizarre. I just got this one. The cops come up and they're like, yeah, it's just, it's Halloween, man, it's just people playing around. I then go to explain what my profession is and the fact that I'm very used to dealing with weird situations like this, but they just kind of slide it off as in, oh no, don't worry man, just long hours, I get the same thing. I ended up inviting them in to have some coffee. It's just because I wanted some company really, but I do think this is especially strange. I say that no, something's wrong, I think someone's following me. And did you see the guy out here? He says no, he says that he's going to have a loop round before he gets back. We say our goodbyes and off he went. But I decide to look out the window. And what do you know? He does one turn to the right and goes off. Great, he hasn't done it. That doesn't mean I can't do it myself though. I have my flashlight and I go outside holding the knife. I'm kind of holding it in a way where I'm seeing in front of myself I can kind of punch out with it. It's probably really not a good idea because I'm pretty stupid and clumsy with these things, but it felt like the right thing to do. Now, I have a good look round, and I do notice something especially weird. I can hear my name being called from one other side of the forest. Of course, it's on the side that has no lights and I can't see into. It sounds like somebody very slowly saying, Will. Will. At first I think maybe it's a wind, but I'm not sure. Then I think I hear somebody saying, help me, and then my name. I think that I just need a good night's sleep. I shine my torch into the forest and I can't see anything. I turned it off for a little bit just to try and get a better view of things with my night eyes, but I can't see a thing. So I go back. I say, man, I've got to get out of this. I'll need a good night's sleep and a rest. Then I angrily check my emails, and once again they haven't approved my time off, which is getting ridiculous now. You'd think in a job like this they'd actually value you getting a good night's sleep and your well-being, but no, not at all. They absolutely do not care here, it turns out, but that's a battle for another time. So I call in for the night and wake up and start driving to my work for the next day. Now I'm driving on that road again and I stop for a little while. I look around trying to see where the person could have come or went to, but again, I can't see anybody. I think once more that this is bizarre. There must have been somewhere that they went. There's no way that they could appear in the road like that, then just vanish, literally into nowhere. I know this is especially weird because why on earth would anybody be out here and just stop like that? Obviously they were trying to scare me, but why? That's the part that's bothering me. I get in my car again, turn on the engine, and for a fraction of a second, I can see something. It's sat in the backseat of my car staring at me. I turn around very quickly. Now this all literally happens in probably a few milliseconds, and it's gone. Whatever that thing is, it's almost just vanished as though it wasn't there. I just can't figure out what's going on. It was like somebody was sat in my car, but I wish I could give you more details, but I was so scared that I was hardly able to bring myself to look back. This all happened so quickly. I don't know what it is. I drive and shake my head, watching as my mile counter ticks over. I try and break it down and think, well, every mile that I go I'm getting closer to my time off. But I didn't think it would have this kind of effect on me. Never had it before. As I'm driving too, I notice something else up ahead. I see more figures dressed in black. I slam on the brakes and my hands are shaky. They then turn and I realise that they're young children in Halloween outfits. And I snap myself out of it. I say, come on, get a grip. Get a hold of yourself. You're a ranger. It's Halloween. Just relax. I'm actually annoyed at how shaken up I become from this, and I start to become a bit more fearless. I mean, it was a beautiful time of year. Actually one of my favourites, to be honest. Now I make it back in, and I say hey to everyone. That's when one of them looks at me, and they appear almost white. I say, hey, what's wrong? He says, I heard something, man, last night. I say, what did you hear? He says, well, I heard somebody calling my name, and it sounded like you. I say, that's impossible, I was at home. He says, I know. I don't think the other guys are going to believe me on this one, but it's like you were injured out there trying to call out for help. I say that I heard something too, and so I thought I heard my name being called last night. I tell him I can't be sure because how quiet it was, but I definitely heard it. He then tells me, be careful out there, and slaps me on my shoulder and hands me some jade. I say, what's this? He said that it's from his family and it keeps you safe in times of danger. I say thank you and say that I'm going to return it to him as soon as I get the chance. So I turn back around and get ready for my shift. I'm not feeling good though at all. Now, I know something's way off here, but again, I've got my job to do, and it's not a fun one. I'm gonna have to go around to where I did before, and then suddenly realise that I completely forgot to mention about the boat on the lake. I'm actually worried a bit because we do need to report these things and it could be a big danger for others. I'm not so afraid though when I realise that one of my colleagues is actually about to do the patrols with me. I calm down quite a lot and we both head out there. This is someone who's been doing the job for not too long, but they're very confident, which is probably what I needed. We start talking about all kinds of things and he says that his kids love Halloween and how they've been making pumpkin cakes and lattes. After not too long, I actually completely forget about my fear, and I'm feeling happy really. I was actually going to get some Halloween style cakes later on and I was excited for that. We actually live near a store where that you can get really good Halloween gear, and I always get something, even if it's just small, kind of like for a treat for myself. So I'm feeling okay now. As we head out though, I realise that my colleague keeps on looking over his shoulder. I say what's wrong and he says, nothing. I just keep thinking that I can see something. I ask him to elaborate, but he can never give me much details. He then says it's almost like somebody or something is just staring at me. But he can never explain exactly why or how. So I think, okay, that's weird. But I don't know. I can't explain it. So he says, don't worry man, let's just keep going. And his tone suddenly changes. I say, hey bud, what's that? He then says to me, what do you mean? I say, what's that up there? Is that another person? And I lock eyes with something very tall, slowly going behind a tree. I can only describe it as kind of looking like a tall figure, but with an animal's head. I can barely see it through the tree line. I didn't have my far sight glasses on at this point. My buddy saw it too. He tells me to get back. He says, I don't know what that thing is, but we're not going up there. I agree. We think maybe somebody's put something up for Halloween, or jettisoned some gear for it, but it just seems so unlikely. And I'm tired of using it as an excuse to rationalise all these strange things happening. So we start walking back quickly. Now we're both quite worried at this point. Luckily he had some time in the military so he could keep up an insane pace. But it almost felt like no matter how far that we actually walked, we didn't necessarily make progress. I think it's kind of like, when you have a terrible, terrible dream and your body doesn't work properly if there's danger. It's basically exactly like that. So all we can do now is just keep trying to progress at the best pace possible. Now it doesn't take too long before we get back, and we decide that we're not going to go out there for a while. Luckily we do have cameras covering quite a lot of this place. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, the cameras didn't actually cover the area that we went to. I mean, this place is huge and you couldn't expect it to, but it was annoying. But it was almost like this thing knew how to stay out of sight, whatever it is. So yeah, we're both pretty freaked out now, and I can't stop scanning the cameras. I actually scanned myself a couple of times where that I think my brain was trying to fill in the gaps or something, and nothing was there. But that's okay. I feel a lot safer doing it behind a screen. Now, as night falls, I'm unfortunately the good old guy that has to stay there. It's now leading closer and closer to Halloween though, so at least I have some scary movies to watch. I know that's not a good idea to be honest, and I don't actually know specifically why I decided to do that, but it's almost like a routine for me. So I now say goodbye to the other colleague as he goes home, back to the bunker and safety of his house. I'm here in this wooden building which probably wouldn't hold back anything, let alone a monster that might be out there. but I put on a Halloween film and I start to relax. I really like to watch some of the classics and I decide to watch Frankenstein. I feel pretty good and I actually have the song quite loud. I can in fact still hear the radio if I need to, so there's nothing to worry about. I do hear a knocking on the window though. I think, oh, they've come to relieve me. I get up and I can't see anyone there. I quickly have a scan round on the cameras and I notice I can't see any cars or anything. Not to worry. I now begin to open the door, but I realise nobody's out here. I think maybe it's just on the TV. So I go and turn the volume down and just start laying there. I'm leaning back in my seat, just kind of thinking about my life now and everything related to it. And that's when I hear it again. This time it made me jump. Now I can't be certain about this next part because I was kind of in a daze, but I'm sure for a second I saw a face in the window. Impossible, I think. And ended up sleeping for a while. Now, I don't actually tell anybody that I did this at work because you're really not supposed to. But I think I was just exhausted and drained from it all. I wake up at sunrise and to Halloween, and I feel alright about things. Now, I go and say goodbye to some of my colleagues who have now arrived. They say, did anything weird happen? And I say, no, it was pretty cool. Just the usual. I'm not actually sure why I did this. It probably would have been a good idea for me to tell them that, yeah, there's something crazy going on out there. You've got to really watch yourselves, but I didn't. So, I decide just to go back home. I get in my car and I feel pretty good. I drive to a gas station which has a cafe, and I go to get a pumpkin spice latte, which again is something I love to have during Halloween times. There's all kinds of trick-or-treaters out too. They do it quite early in my state, so I think this is really cool. I don't know why, there's almost like a magic to it for me. I'm feeling pretty good, but very sleep deprived. I'm also a bit annoyed because I probably threw off my entire sleeping pattern now from doing that. But it's okay. So I eventually get back home. My brother's actually here now with his partner, which is pretty cool. They actually live quite a far away from here, but they pass through when they're going to college. And it's always nice to say hey to them and see how they're doing with their lives. So I'm here for a little bit with them, and we decide to continue. Now we keep on watching some scary films, and we go out together for a walk. We go quite a long way and actually come to some of the other houses. You can see all kinds of different people doing trick-or-treating and whatnot. And eventually we decide to head back. My brother says, oh god, well, do you see that costume? It was one really good one. They look like they might be older on stilts or something, but someone had something really tall dressed up. I say, what do you mean? He says, don't know man, it kind of, they went into the woods, but it looked cool. I didn't ask much more about it. The tone of my brother's voice wasn't a need to raise any kind of fear at the time, so I don't. But I start to feel sick though. Now it's kind of like the feeling as if you got some kind of like unclean surfaces around you, and you kind of have like the lump in your throat, like you're struggling to hold things down. So we eventually get back now, and life's pretty good. We're happily watching things, and I ended up falling asleep on the chair, and my brother and his girlfriend go to the spare room. I'm awoken in the night by something knocking on the door. I grab my bowl of candy and say hey, very deliriously, opening the door. I wait for a few seconds and wipe my eyes. I expected to feel the weight drop from the candy bowl as some happy trick-or-treaters fill their eyes with the candy and later their stomachs. But this doesn't happen. I look around again, and I think this is weird. There's no one here. Maybe I've imagined it. So I close the door behind me, turn around and go to sit down. After doing so, it happens again, this time loud enough to actually make me jump. I quickly get up now and decide that I need to investigate this. There was definitely something off with the way that this happened. It was too loud and hostile to be anything normal. I start to think, well, maybe it's my brother. I go to look where they're staying, but I can't see anyone. So I know that that's bizarre. As I get up, I then see my brother crouching down looking out a window. What's wrong, man? He says, did you hear that? I say, what? I swear I just heard my girlfriend and her name calling out from the woods. I even believed it myself. He said he got up to go to the bathroom when he heard it. He can hear this from the open, but he can't figure out exactly where it's coming from. He said he went to check, and that's when he realised she's asleep, so he knows that something is definitely wrong here. And that's when his fear sets in. I say, what next? He says, well, I saw you, idiot. And then I think, this is really weird. I then say, did you hear the knocking? And he says no. How he didn't hear the knocking, I'll never know, because it felt like it could have shook the house down. We decide that it's the best time that we investigate. Now my brother says that he's going to check around out the windows, and I say that, yeah, I'm going to go outside. I don't know why I actually agreed to this, because it meant my brother was in the safety of the house and I just went outside, but I guess it's my house and I know the area well, so I head outside to see what I could. I've got my flashlight on and some warm clothes now. I was actually so tired that I didn't think to bring a weapon, which I regretted. I thought I could probably turn off the torch and quickly hit someone on the head, but thinking of it now, that probably wouldn't have worked, but it helped me anyway. So I turn off the torch a few times to try and let my night eyes set in and not give away my position when I see something. Up ahead, I see the silhouette of something standing there. This thing is very tall and slender. Now, I only saw this for about 2 seconds as I turned and screamed, running in the opposite direction. I look over my shoulder and I can see it walking slowly towards me with a limp. I scream my brother's name and say, help, what the hell is that? I run in and slam the door. My brother starts screaming too, and subsequently his girlfriend as he spots it. Now we quickly lock all of the doors and windows, and I go and get some knives and give one to my brother. We think maybe it's possibly a trick-or-treater, but we realise quickly it's not, as it slowly goes towards the forest. This thing almost walks like it's on stilts or stick legs or something. It's like it was made out of dark drapes or something, and it slowly goes towards the tree line. He says, that's it. I say, what, tell me, thinking he knows and he's gonna have a rational explanation. He says, the thing, that's where it come from, the voice, my girlfriend. We then looked at each other really confused, and we stare and waited. 1 minute passes, then 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 4. And we realise that, well, we probably should have checked the other side. And now I look on the other side of the window. Furthermore, I'm terribly paranoid now. What was that thing? I just don't know. I actually have so much energy now that I don't feel tired whatsoever. I actually went to make my brother some coffee so that way we can actually stay awake and figure out what on earth is happening. After a little bit of time, we've realised that we're not necessarily in danger now, and that's a nice feeling. But it doesn't last for too long. We eventually decide that we need to go back and figure out what this thing is. So as soon as day breaks, we head out. Now we're not really able to see anything though. We have a look, eventually bravely going towards a tree line where we saw this thing, but there's nothing there. So that's actually really annoying. I wanted an explanation for this. Actually, all we saw was some trick-or-treaters getting it in the next day, which I thought was quite funny, but none of them actually come here. Now, me and my brother racked our brains for probably the next 2 or 3 hours trying to figure out what we've just seen, but neither of us are able to come up with any kind of logical or rational explanation as to what it could have possibly been. Whatever this is seems to go against everything normal or that we're aware of, but I don't like that it called out my brother's name, and that I was hearing this before. Now I have the rest of the day off, and my brother and his girlfriend offered me to go with them, but I say sorry, I can't, I've got my work soon. And dishearteningly, I decide that I have to just go in to work. I really don't want to. I would have paid $5,000 to not have to go in that day. It really felt like it. I actually didn't have that much saved, but I would have given it, honestly, or whatever I had in my bank account then. I get into work and I'm met by police there, which is very weird. I get a feeling in my stomach thinking, oh no, we've probably found a body or something, and I get a little paranoid. I then go and ask what happened, and one of my colleagues come and say, hey, did you hear what happened to Bill? I say, no, what happened? Oh God, how is he? He says, no, he's fine. He just broke his leg. I say, what do you mean? And he tells me that when he was on the night shift there, he heard somebody calling his name. He said that he couldn't figure out exactly who it was, but it kept saying that I need help up here. He said he followed it, but he was so caught up in this that he didn't actually take a second to look at his surroundings. And eventually, he made it over a ridgeline and felt something sharp in his back. I say, what? He says it felt like something stabbed him. He then feels a force push him down, and he falls a long way. He fell from his radio too, so we didn't know any of this was going on. I say, God, is he definitely alive? They say, yeah. And they eventually find him out there and hear him whimpering. When they found him, he's fractured his leg, and he's got all kinds of cuts, but 3 very distinct gashes in his back, which he had to stop bleeding. Eventually they're able to get the medics out there to support him and take him away, and now he's being treated for it at the local hospital. I say I can't do this, and I actually give in my working notice right then and there. They say they understand. They didn't ask me for any more details. I was able to leave, and it was just due to psychological shock is what they had on paper. I remember driving back to my home and not knowing what to make of all of this. I decided that the safest thing that I can do now is move back to my parents' house. Well, I actually ended up going to my grandma's, but I did that for 6 months before moving. Even when the house was for sale, I refused to live there. Even to this day, it still really gives me nightmares. Every Halloween it comes straight back to the front of my mind.